So did you have a good week and weekend?
Um, I'm trying to remember what I did. I don't think I did much. What about you?
Well, it was one of those weekends where I thought I did a lot, and now looking back, I don't know how much I remember correctly. Oh, no, yeah, okay, I remember. I had to go to UVU for some stuff and take care of things, and I went. I also met with a client, and then while I was hanging around at UVU, my wife was went to Syracuse to visit her family, her kids, and then everybody decided to go to the Curio show up in Salt Lake the next day. So I stayed an extra day, checked that out, uh, spent morning with all the kids and grandkids and stuff like that, and then went back home to St. George to do work, which is awesome.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
well.
fun. Are you talking about the Oddities and Curiosities show?
Yes, that's it. And they also had a gem show and a tattoo show at the same time. We didn't get to see those, but the oddities was. I mean, there was a lot of really good artwork, a lot of fun
Yeah.
stuff, and there were a couple. There were a few people that did taxidermy in Victorian times, mid 19th century. A lot of people, because of the Industrial Revolution, there was a growing amount of income for middle income families, and because of that, people started collecting stuff, and of course, all the people that were with it dove right in to provide stuff for them to collect. And one of the big things was small animal taxidermy, where they would do have whole vignettes. So you could have a collection of swallows, for example, or doves or robins, and a little dollhouse for them. And they would each play a different role in this little. You could even have a village that to collect with the robins. You'd have the boy robins and the girl robins, and they'd wear bonnets or monocles or whatever. And they also did the same thing with mice, chipmunks, uh, squirrels, different things like that. And it was really fun to, and I know all this because I have a friend who runs. One of my friends runs Cat's Cradle Antiques, and that kind of stuff still is popular. But at that oddities place, I don't know if you went, but they had a lot of really fun taxidermy. Um, there were people that, straight hardcore hunting trophy taxidermy, all the way to I saw one woman carrying around a groundhog with a pink hat and pink buttons, and a parasol. It was really funny. And then there was another one that a couple of places that did taxidermy, but they did cryptids. So a lot of jackalopes, a couple of Fiji mermaids, stuff like that. Pretty neat things.
That's so funny. I went a few years ago. I haven't gotten to go again, but I remember my favorite things were the big shadow boxes where they would put the bones, like the skulls, and they'd put taxidermy insects and dried flowers. And I just really loved all of those things displayed together, like, nature's art, like the decomposition type of um, just the way nature works. I just thought it was really pretty together. Do you go
Well,
to FanX?
I haven't been to Fan X, but at the oddities place, there were a few people that had bell jars that had exactly that, with bones and dried flowers and insects and stuff like that. That was really cool. So it was an
Yeah,
entire little vignette in this bell jar that was only like a foot high.
yeah. I think it's also, I don't know if they had any this year, but I've seen things where they had, like, from a long, long time ago, they had taken a loved one's hair and used their hair to, like little trees, and, like, I mean, kind of bizarre, but it's really interesting to see how people would use, like, just their loved one's hair to, like, memorialize them in a way.
Yeah, that was really popular from about the winding up of the 18th century all the way up to about 1920. That kind of thing was really popular. I think its heyday was shortly after the Civil War, 1860 to 1890, right around there. Very, very cool stuff. And I have one of my friends is a sculptor that now does that kind of thing himself too. You know, making the trees out of human hair, stuff like that. Very cool. So Jessica, did you have a good weekend?
Sorry, my mic was off. Yeah, I had a good weekend. I was in St. George with family.
Oh, good. We probably just missed each other then because I came back to St. George late Saturday night and went up like Thursday or something up that way. And then you spent the weekend here while I was up there. It is really it's nice in St. George right now because it's finally cooling down. You know, it takes like a half an hour to cook an egg on the sidewalk instead of a minute. So it's still yeah, when I was driving down here, the temperature went from 72 in Utah County up to 94 by the time I got home, and I was thinking uh, that it was still feeling pretty cool at 94. That just uh, oh well. I'm not going to complain because I chose to live here. Well, I'm glad you guys both have good had a good weekend. I am seeing that people are starting to turn in more and more of their annotated bibliographies. And we also got some stuff from the service learning people that was really exciting, where they're talking about the kinds of things that they're doing. One person is in the class is also a sewing expert, and they are working with a local hospice community to and also a young person's church group, and they're going to be coordinating making stuff that sewing things that the hospice center needs with the young people the teenagers that they're working with. And I thought that sounded like a pretty good service project, and it uses their artistic skill set. So I thought that was pretty neat. Well, I'm also seeing we have another wire thing that was turned in, and I wanted to look at those with you guys, just to brush up. And then I wanted to touch on the structure with skin things a little bit. And today it might be a little bit shorter because next week I want to really dive in to the um, wire after we see what everybody's turned in, and talk about that. And then we'll also talk a little bit more about the structure and skin. So we're just going to introduce it today, go over the quiz a bit, and then we'll go into both of those things a little bit more next week. So I'm going to see. Okay, so this is the wire scribble, the 3D scribble that we're talking about. And these, I think last week we looked at these examples and some others too. And the kind of thing that we're going more towards is this. And remember, you guys can use whatever wire you want to add to this. And one of the students pointed out to me that you may have to dig through your kit a little bit to find the wire, because they thought they were just going to have to go out and get it because they didn't think their kid had it. But they took everything out piece by piece and actually found the wire on the spool down at the bottom of the kit. So it is there, but you may need to hunt a bit for it. And again, this is the kind of thing we're looking at, a three-dimensional scribble. And I wanted to, we looked at some of these artists, or I want you to look at all the videos of all the artists. I think one of my favorite ones is Alexander Calder. he really defined how textile designers and fabric designers do their job now because of the shapes that he came up with. He called them organelles. And he's just really super brilliant. But this first video is him. He uses wire and other little things that other people would have thrown away to make little puppets, and he performs a circus. And it's a 10-minute video, but here's another one. This is 10 minute. This is 12-minute. But in this 10-minute video, the second one, it actually films him doing the whole performance or a big chunks of the performance, and it's really kind of fun. And I just really liked all of these artists and what they were doing. And I just trying to find the page that I had thought I had teed up. Okay, here we go. One thing I'm noticing too is not everybody is posting their wire objects, and it is really important to post them when on the discussions, simply because that lets everybody else see what's going on. Let's see. I'm gonna share this, then I'm gonna pull the share away, and then I'm gonna actually no. Let's see what I can do. Hold on a sec. Okay. All right. Almost there. All right. So I'm gonna share this, and we're just gonna look at each of the person's objects that they made for this assignment. Remember, this assignment is drawing and then images of the wire. So this is the person's drawing. And if you remember last week, I was really opposed to anybody doing flowers because of the flowers that I've seen in the past. And if you remember, I don't like the flowers because there isn't a lot of dimensionality to them. Most people that do them, the flower head is flat, the leaves are flat, everything's flat, it looks like a pressed flower. It's not really good for expressing any sort of a volume. And I want to show you what this person did. So when Haley showed me this drawing, I was not very impressed. Wasn't looking forward to seeing it. But I want to show you what Haley did. Okay, with this, the stem is not just a stick. This thing can stand, Haley made it so that the base is wide enough this thing can stand by itself. The leaves are really simple, but they're not flat. I mean, both of them curve. This one curves up and then down, and this one curves down and then up. And the flower ball, the petal ball in this, I really like it because the petals are going everywhere. And it looks very much, the whole thing does, like a total 3D scribble. And so I think Haley did an excellent job. I was not looking forward to checking this out simply because it looked like it was just going to be a flat flower. But Haley watched the video. She saw everything that I had warned against for doing the flowers and ended up doing, I think, a really good job. So let's see if I can find another photo here. Yeah, and you can kind of see this. This is a little bit closer to the top looking down. And again, the flower, you can tell this wire is going every which way. The leaves are bent all over. The stem is just not a typical stem. They really went hog wild when it came to making this look like a 3D scribble. And I really appreciate that. It's one of the frustrations all of us have, I think, sometimes is when people think they know what they're doing and then they just totally ignore the directions. And in this case, that is not at all what happened. I'm very impressed with this. Are you guys seeing the kinds of things that I'm seeing in this flower?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it looks great.
Thank you. Oh no, it sounds like my computer is screwing up your mics. So
Sorry, I'm like outside, so it's probably you can probably hear a bunch of cars and stuff, but yeah, I can see what you're saying.
okay, I'm sorry, Jessica. I can't understand it all. I sorry about that. The little bit that I heard, it sounds like you guys are seeing a lot of what I'm seeing, and it's exciting to me. I really like the fact that this person did this. And then I want to see if we can find really quick, just to remind ourselves of what the other two that have been turned in look like. And then again, like I said, next week we're going to look at what everybody else's stuff is. So these are due on Sunday. Okay, this one is the mermaid. And I'm going to switch images really quick. Right, here's the image of that, where it definitely is, a three-dimensional scribble. And I think what would really make this thing successful is if that tail was rotated a bit so that the tail itself could be used as a base to support the standing mermaid. I think that would be incredibly cool. Let's see. Okay, and then this one is the raccoon. I'm sorry, you didn't see the. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I forgot that I wasn't sharing the right screen. I'm going to change that. Okay, showing this tab instead. That's weird. I wonder why. Okay, here we go. And you can see that it looks to me like this mermaid could stand up if the tail was just, the two flippers on the tail was just rotated 90 degrees. I think that would work out really well. And then the other one I wanted to show you, this is the sketch that they did. And here's the raccoon. And what I love about this is that this is really a strong, very strong scribble, and it can stand totally by itself. It kind of combines all the best things of like the ankylosaur and other dinosaurs like that with kids' drawings of raccoons. And I think this is really a successful one. Ava did a great job. All right. Now, I wanted to talk about what this next one coming up is. Before we do that, uh, what are your guys' thoughts on the wire? I mean, how are you doing? How are you progressing on your own wire sculptures?
I am progressing slowly, but I will have it done on time.
Well, that's good. And like I said too, just let if things are going to be a little bit late, just let me know, and it's totally fine. How about you, Jessica? Well, if you can't talk, Jessica, that's fine. You can type it into the chat.
I'll try. Um, can you hear me? Hopefully you can. But if I'm being honest, I haven't started yet. I've got a lot of projects, but I'm gonna try really hard to finish on time. I'll
Okay,
email you if I don't, but
hold on a second. It is my computer, and so it's recording the really awful noise.
Okay.
Um, uh, is there any way that you could type in what you're saying and I can read that out loud? Because Kim started talking too, and then my computer did the whole Danger Will Robinson robot voice thing. I think part of it is my internet connection. My internet connection is usually really, really good, but sometimes everybody in the neighborhood wants to get on the Book of Face to talk to their grandkids and stuff, and it makes it a little bit of a challenge. Okay, and Jessica's sounds like you're up to your neck with a lot of big projects. Well, I think one of the things too that's important is um, instead of holding off and turning stuff in, it's perfectly fine to turn stuff in that is almost there or partially there. I think that's a little bit better because at least you get some points, and then you can always change it and resubmit. I don't have any problem. Like I told you, there's been several students who resubmit all through the semester. I had one student, this is the record so far. Their initial project was really, really horrible, but we talked back and forth. They kept resubmitting, and their record was 6 resubmissions. And at the end of the sixth one, they got full points because they understood what was going on and they did a terrific job. So, if you don't mind taking the time to revisit stuff, I don't have a problem regrading it. Right. So for the thing that we're going to be starting next, it's called Structure with the Skin. And this is something where now Gustav Eiffel, he was the one who did the Eiffel Tower. And at the time it was built, I believe it was the tallest structure in the world. And when you look at the structure, you can see it's a lot of triangles, it's a lot of girders. When we look at it, I don't know if any of you have been there and seen it in person. It's magnificent because it's so tall. But as you get closer, you're thinking, well, what is all this? But that's because a lot of people that are not impressed by it are thinking of it in 21st century standards. This is a proud child of the Industrial Revolution, where people are making girding steel, which is just a really powerfully important building material. And this was one of the first really knock your socks off application of that material. And of course, it was later responsible for building the Empire State Building, which again was the tallest building in the world at the time. And that was during the Great Depression. Does anybody want to hazard a guess on how many people actually got killed through like accidents and falling and stuff like that when they built the Empire State Building? That's a good guess. And Kim says guess is 50. I think that's a really good guess. Well, is he actually the same number of people that got accidentally hurt or killed making the arch in St. Louis, which was also a tremendous feat of engineering, and that was zero. Nobody died. And that's the thing that is so amazing because everybody was so excited to work on the building. They all did their absolute very, very best. So I just think that was incredible. Now I have to that there is a caveat to that. If you watch the Doctor Who episode where he goes back and finds out that the one of his alien menaces is trying to take over the world through the Empire State Building, there's a couple of people that do die in that episode, but in the history books, That's not the case, as far as I remember. But what's so amazing about this kind of construction is just the girding itself, just the structure underneath, makes a really powerful shape. It's iconic. It feels very graphic. It feels very strong. And we look over here, this is using the same engineering, but the artist who designed this, Frederick Auguste Bartholdi, he coated it all with 1/4-inch copper plate or 1/2-inch copper plate. And if you guys have seen The Fringe in the world of alternate, the other universe of the Fringe people check out, they've polished this down again, so it's the original copper shine. And I don't really, for us in this universe, I think that the patinaed copper is really an iconic and beautiful look. And if you watch Ghostbusters 2, you saw some of the interior girding and support, which was heavily inspired by Gustav Eiffel's engineering. And it wasn't just heavily inspired, it was actually designed by the same guy. And that's why it looks so similar. And the reason why we're talking about this kind of a thing is this whole module is exploring those ideas of the framework that supports, just like this, and the skin that covers it, just like this. But we're also asking the questions, what's more important? Is the skin more important, or is the structure underneath more important? And my answer is I don't really think that that's a very good question, because both are absolutely vital. And what we're actually going to be doing in this module is exploring that idea by making it an object where the viewer can see that both the structure and the skin are of equal importance. These artists here, all of these guys, do some really amazing stuff. And you'll see that some of them pay a lot more attention to the structure. Some of them pay a lot more attention to the skin. Like Frank Gehry he is one of my heroes. He's an architect that really didn't get started until he was my age. And he's a super genius. I mean, one of his pieces is the Disney concert hall that is covered with titanium. And he loves building these structures underneath that are incredibly strong, and then doing like almost a windblown skin on top of them. So it feels ethereal. At the same time, it's going to stand up to a storm. And then this is another one of my favorite people in the world, Buckminster Fuller. This is his map of the world, which is actually a lot more accurate than most other people's maps, because most maps, they try to squish the world out flat into a rectangle, and it's not. It's a ball. And what's neat about this is a Buckminster Fuller's map, you can actually fold this up and make it into, it's pretty much an icosahedron, a 20-sided ball. What's neat about him is he was never formally trained as an engineer or mathematician, but he had such a ridiculously overactive mind growing up that by the time he was in his high school football team, he had already developed a style of engineering to make things now called geodesic domes. It's basically a sphere where the surface of the sphere is made with triangles of different shapes. Because he found that the most inherently stable form in nature is based on the triangle. And his geodesic domes are the only architectural structure that has ever been discovered or invented that we know about that actually gets stronger the bigger it is, which I think that is just amazing. And his Dymaxion People Mover is one of the coolest cars ever. He started building it late 1920s, and by the early 1930s, they were ready to go into production. And it's a car that could travel 55 miles an hour and get, at that time, I believe 25 miles an hour per gallon of gas. And it could fit like 15 people. So incredibly cool. but it didn't make it didn't require that people spend as much money on gas as they should. And so at the start of the Depression, they stopped production, and you can actually see one of the surviving cars in the Auto Museum in Las Vegas. So this quiz, I wanted to go through and look at the quiz. Oh, and in my shocking reveals in just a moment ago, Jessica said that she had no idea about those things. And I love it when you guys say stuff like that because it makes me feel like I'm smart. All right, now this is um, the first question. This is called "Opposites: My Better Half or Opposites Attract" by Adam Thomas. He's a sculptor. He lives in Utah County. He does really fantastic things. He usually takes things that we take for granted and reforms them, sometimes with totally different materials, sometimes with the same materials, just doing different things. And what's very cool about this, of course, is it's two ladders, but the ladders, they aren't going to be usable as ladders because one is curved around like this and the other one's curved around like this, and they almost look like two wedding rings connected to each other. Now, I want to see if we can watch this video really quick. It's a very short video, and if it works, if you guys can hear it and it works, then that'll be great. So this is actually on BYU campus in the old gallery in the middle of the Harris Fine Arts Center. Okay, from my side, it sounds like the sound is being wonky again, but I want you to just watch it, and I will put a link to this in the attendance thing so you can watch the video with the sound and everything. And this is Adam actually talking about this work that he's done. And you walk around it, you can see all sorts of different things. These are some of his other sculptures that you can see, where like this in the background is a wooden chair. There's chains that hang from the ceiling, all sorts of stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to switch tabs. So I'll watch it again without sound. And Jessica, you weren't seeing the video because I did not share the right screen. I'm sorry. Uh, and you can see, like, here's a rocking chair that is just disproportionately tall. This is the kind of stuff that Adam does. He takes things that you're familiar with and just really changes them. So as we walk around this, you can really tell what the sculpture looks like, what it's shaped like, all those kinds of things. And so I'm going to include a link to this video in the attendance thing, in the attendance assignment, so you can watch the video and listen to it. Now the question is, what are the delineated forms? Well, we talked some about forms and shapes, things like that. The difference between a form and a shape is generally a form is going to be 3D and a shape is going to be 2D. And so when we're talking about the delineated forms in space, remember the last quiz, we talked a little bit about what is the different kinds of lines. And there is something called an implied line that we use all the time in sculpture. And we use it in painting, and other things too. An implied line is where somebody has not drawn the explicit line. They're using other things to create the line. And some examples of that are when we looked at the sculpture of the reclining figure by Henry Moore, and there was that string pressed into the plaster. the string was definitely a line. But as we see the different shapes and the different fields of color, how they interact, or where we see the edge of the piece interacts with the space behind it because the space behind it is darker, or when something turns a corner, or where there's a figure of some sort and the eyes are looking somewhere. All those things create implied lines where our minds read them as lines, even though the lines don't actually exist. And in this case, one of the implied line, one of the delineated form, well, I should say this, excuse me, let me back up for just a second. A delineated form is any form, which again is a 3D equivalent of a shape. It's any form that is essentially outlined by an implied line. And this right here, these black lines are lines. They are lines on the floor. That's exactly what they are. But all the wood in this, none of the wood in this structure is an explicit line. They're not, none of them are drawn. All of them start forming shapes that or start forming implied lines that create the delineated forms. So one of the delineated forms is delineated or outlined by the implied line of the ladder shapes. You know, it's that circle there. There's another circle back here. And then another whole set of delineated forms are the ones that are outlined by the rungs of the ladder and the edges of the ladder. Right? Does that make sense to you guys what a delineated form is and as it's outlined by an implied line? Okay. Kim, do you have any questions about that? Or because you said I think so. Does that kind of make sense? It's the delineated form is any form within the sculpture area that because becomes its own thing because it's delineated by the implied lines around it. So if there, for example, if there's a shift in texture around the sculpture from one area to another, or a hard shift in plane. Like if we look at this piece, this is another one of these reclining figures that Henry Moore did. Some of the implied lines that we get are like right under here, where this, we have this strong field that's facing us, that's white, comes down and it changes direction very strongly to be away from us. And we see this line right here. That line was not really drawn onto the sculpture itself. It is an implied line because of the shifting planes in the sculpture. And then the delineated form is we get this whole kind of shape right here that is made because of all those implied lines. And that shape is in a three-dimensional space is the delineated form. Another one is right here. There's a hard notch cut out of the head, and that hard notch creates implied lines because of the shifting plane of the sculpture. And we can see that because of the background, and it becomes another delineated form. You know, this upside down triangle kind of notch into the sculpture. And I'm hoping that makes sense. It will make sense as you read the chapters for this quiz, and those chapters are 5 and 12. And if you don't, there are going to be ringer questions in each of the quizzes where you really have to use the definition that's from the textbook. I'll just say that. And I think it's the Fulton or Fuller Museum on campus. They have 4 or 5 copies of the textbook too that you can, they're at the reference desk and they will let you go and take one to the study cubicle and do your quiz online there. Now, right here it says the 2 most common rigid materials artists, sculptors use in constructing artworks. What we're talking about as the most common, I also want you to think about going back in history. So if we think about this, what are the materials that our ancestors have had for a very long time on this list. And I think right away we can think of, okay, well, one that they've had for a long time is stone. Another one that they've had for a long time is wood. Another one that they've had for a long time is metal. There's some really beautiful cast metal works that are 5,000 years old. You know, metal, especially gold, has been, since human beings made a fire hot enough to melt anything, they've been making metal. So those three elements have been throughout history some of the most common, well-used rigid materials. And then this is where there's 4 possible answers. This is where we're going to use our critical thinking. First off, plastic is only about 100 years old. And so plastic, whatever answer has plastic, we're not going to use. So this first one has plastic and this last one has plastic. So those two are out because that is not one of the 2 most common rigid materials. When we look at this, we have, okay, stone is now gone. It has been around for a long time historically. So stone can't be one of the answers because we've already gotten rid of both of the answers with plastic in it. Now, glass is more common now than it was like maybe 300 years ago. But even then, for a very long time, glass was treated almost like a precious jewel. The Romans would treat glass jewelry with the same kind of reverence and burials as they did gold and emeralds. So it's not used very often. So this one's out. So 1, 3, and 4 are all out. The one we have left is metal and wood. And I said wood has a lot more access than many other materials we can sculpt with. You have to do less with wood than you do with clay to get it ready to work with. And metal, as long as people have had fires hot enough to melt anything, they've been using metal. So, metal is thousands of years old. So that's a really solid answer there. Now, fiber arts, one of my friends got her MFA at BYU in textile design. And she did, actually, it was hooked rugs. It's a folk art that was really common between the 20s and 30s up through the late 1940s. And she did just amazing work. But there's also a lot of artists that will do very cool stuff with fiber arts, and you can add different materials. You can take the fiber arts, put them over a mold or an armature, and then use different kinds of resins and paint them so you still get the fiber showing very thoroughly, but it makes it super strong. And so you can make them fiber arts very durable in outdoor conditions, adding different hardening compounds. And if you go on YouTube and look up fiber arts in Singapore, there is a couple artists in Singapore that do exactly that, and they do some amazing stuff. And they will do these beautiful dress forms. Like I say, their dress is made out of like gauzy materials that are then they add a hardening compound, and then as it sets, they put it over different forms, so it looks like people walking around in this gauze, but the only thing there is gauze. And then once it hardens all the way, they will go around Singapore and put them on bridges and in parks and different things like that, and it's some pretty amazing stuff. Now here we're talking about negative spaces. And negative space is one of those things that I know you guys are aware of when you do 2D art, photography, graphic design, all that kind of stuff. We're very aware of negative space. And in sculpture, it's the same kind of thing, with the difference being that we see negative space in this large reclining figure only from the perspective that this is a flat image. But if you can imagine for a second, this left hand is touching the ground probably about 20, 25 feet away from this right toe. And so there's a lot of volume that this sculpture takes. And negative space is everything where the sculpture isn't. So we get this principal form here about where the hips are, really interesting form. the negative space is, from this perspective, everything around that's not this form. And if you can imagine this leg coming out here, it's emerging from the positive shape of this thing into the negative space of this thing. And the negative space is essentially just an artsy-fartsy term that says anywhere the sculpture isn't. So for this, you get this left arm, there's a really large amount of negative space here that helps to define the torso. And one of the things that's amazing about Henry Moore, if you look at this leg form, it comes down, it doesn't quite touch the ground, it comes up again. What Henry Moore is so good at doing is when he made something, it felt like it leaned against the air. And I think that that's just absolutely beautiful. And he used negative space so it became something vibrant. And one of the terms we use today is a sculpture that does that well activates the volume of space around it, because it's really activating all that negative space. It makes it feel that like the negative space isn't just missing, but it feels like it's almost important to the sculpture. In this forced perspective, the answer to this is in your textbook. And one of the things that keeps coming to my mind is when, of course, we have 2 and 3-point perspectives that everybody's comfortable with. But in 3D design, I've seen a lot of really excellent stage design where you only have a stage that's like 25 feet deep, but you use forced perspective in the way that you set the stage to get up so that the audience feels that the space is a lot bigger. And when it's done right, it is absolutely amazing. When we look at this example, we do have an example of forced perspective just in this, because we're getting used to kind of a certain scale with the head, the arms, the breasts, and then the artist kind of switches things around with this odd hip shape. Then all of a sudden, this foot, which if it was in the same scale would be comparable to this, the foot he's going way out of scale. And in this case, he's forcing our perspective to really play around with our sense of space. Because suddenly this is a lot bigger and it confronts the viewer a lot faster than what we would expect if he didn't use forced perspective to make it appear so large. So something to think about. Now in this question is, which of these 3 sculptures does the best job of activating space around it? The answer is all of them. But for this, I just want you to pick one and then pontificate, use your big person words to articulate why it activates the space around it. And I think, we have different kinds of perspectives of space here. Like on this one, the lit match, these are huge steel girders. And this point right here is probably close to about 20, 25 feet in the air. So this is gigantic. And what this artist is doing with all these strong lines leaning over this one way, it looks like this thing, even though it's been stable for decades, it looks like it's about ready to fall over. Which gives me a bit of the heebie-jeebies. I feel definite anxiety whenever I see this sculpture. Definite anxiety. But just like Henry Moore, what the Suevero is doing is making us feel like the air around it is pushing against it. It's leaning against that negative space. It's very much activating the volume of space around it because it feels like it's leaning into the air and it's ready to move through it, just like when we talked about the energy of a diagonal line getting ready to fall over. Now in this one, Brian's work, The Giver of Water, he's one of the best anatomy artists I've ever seen. He's just absolutely incredible. And what he loves doing is he draws a lot from Greek and Sumerian mythology, but he uses very contemporary imagery. So this image reminds me a lot of some tomb paintings where you do have the water bearers marching to support the people who have died. And, of course, he's carrying something that is not necessarily Egyptian or anything like that. But what's interesting about this, the space around it, if you can imagine this in a gallery, because it is recognizably similar to human scale, because it is easily identifiable as a human, it engages people almost automatically who just see it as a person almost, in the back of their heads, it's a sculpture of a person. And the fact that this water bearer is looking intently at somebody, there's an implied line that comes straight out here. That engages people around it. The fact that it's not a completely stable stance, it feels like he's leaning to his right a little bit, that activates people around him. And then the fact that he's reaching out to hand you something also engages the people around him. So I think that the argument can be made that water bearer also activates the space around him, but in a different way. It's more psychological. I think that's fascinating. Then this lit match, we look at this, and this feels to me, you've probably seen the super high-speed cameras that will show what something being dropped in a puddle of water actually looks like. This feels like to me that something is exploding, and the artist has captured the moment where the kinetic energy is first released. And it feels like these are all made with essentially old-timey matchsticks glued together with the common center. And to me, it feels like to me that this activates space just by engaging the volume of air around it with the shapes that protrude. They seem to be poking out and stabbing into the volume of air around it. And I think that's pretty amazing too. All these have beautiful silhouettes, very aware of the negative space around them, and each of them activate space in a very different way. So whichever of these three you pick, I'm looking for a number. I'm looking for the one that you pick, and then at least 2 sentences that describe why you feel that way. And again, use your grown-up words and articulate what you see or what you think. Now, wax is one of these materials. Usually, it's a low-grade beeswax that is used in a lot of sculpting when people do lost wax casting. There's other waxes that are used too. When doing a bronze, a lot of the times what is going on? There we go. Okay. When doing a bronze, making a bronze cast, a lot of the times what happens is the person will sculpt something, make an original, then that original will be molded. And today we use latex, foam latex. And then that mold is taken off the original, is closed up again, and it's filled with a cheap wax. And then the wax cools down long enough to make like a 1/4-inch skin on the inside of that mold all the way around, and then poured out. And then that in turn is filled in as well with some material, and then it's covered with a material that when you fire it, it creates a volume of interior space that is now hollow where the wax used to be. And then that's what the metal is poured into. And wax, a lot of the times when people do that, they will make an original that's out of like wood or clay, and then they'll mold it in wax, and then they'll go back over the wax and touch that up. They'll do different things to the wax. One artist that I know will take and soak cloth in wax, drape that over the form, and paint it and get some really fascinating textures, because wax is super cheap, super easy to use. And then once it cools, he can go ahead and cast it in a ceramic compound. Then when he fires the ceramic, all the wax burns out, and then mold it into bronze. So some of the reasons why wax is used is one is that it's incredibly easy to work with. Another reason is, when wax is used as a casting material, it has a really low melting point. So you can pack just really cheap clay around it when you pack it up really tight. This is how Nigerian bronze casters did it. This is how Greeks bronze casters did it, and Romans. You pack the clay around, and because wax has such a low melting point, you can heat it up, fire the crappy clay, and get all the wax to burn out. And then you keep the clay hot and pour the metal in, and the clay is still quite a bit cooler than the metal and helps the metal to cool as it goes into the mold. Another reason is wax is incredibly cheap. It's a lot cheaper to work with wax to get everything figured out than to work with the bronze or gold or whatever else other metal you're working with out. And it also, especially today, the wax separates from the vinyl, or I'm sorry, the rubber that you use for the mold. It separates from that really easily. So that's at least 4 reasons. Now, plasticity refers to something that's a lot older than plastic, and that's not what plasticity is referring to, and this is definitely in your textbook. All right, does anybody know what an armature is? And this makes me think of what's the studio that made Paranorman, and one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Kubo and the Two Strings. Just incredible. They do 3D animation, and the puppets or the little critters that they make are out of things like plasticine, just plastic-based clay that doesn't dry, so you can keep flexing it and moving it around. And when they do that kind of animation, there's this little metal skeleton that they put in the inside of the figure, the puppet that they're manipulating. And that skeleton helps it to hold its shape and hold its movements as they move it around for the different shots of the movie. So an armature, anytime you have a material that is not strong enough to support its own weight, an armature is something that an artist will put on the inside of that material to help it support its weight. Sometimes they're removed, sometimes they're not. But it's like an interior spine or skeleton for the piece. And for this is a question about scale. And to get this question correct, get all 12 points, you need to write something about each of these 3 scales. So we have this, a really, really tiny scale, miniature scale. This is by Slinkachu, where you see this is an actual Coke can. So he uses figures from German railroad models is what he uses. And so very, very tiny. And this guy, Dwayne Hansen, one of you has picked them to do your research on. Dwayne Hansen does these hyper-realistic people that he dresses up in real clothes, and he uses normal folks for the models. And he does them so they're hyper-realistic. They look like flesh and blood, but when people encounter them in the museum, there's been several people where they just get mad at the person for not responding to them because they want to interact. And then Ron Mueck, he does these monumental sized hyper-realistic sculptures too. And I think it's just fantastic. So this is, a 5.5 foot tall individual right there walking around a baby that should be shorter than her forearm. And this baby's actually 20 feet long. So those 3 different scales, and I want you to write one sentence about each of the scales as to why, or as to what that scale will make you feel as you interact with the thing. So I do say 2 to 3 sentences, but you do need to address each of those 3 scales. Then this, I think, ties us back squarely into the point of this whole module, which is structure and skin. My contention is that they're both equally important. And in this one, what you need to do is look at this and decide for you, which is the structure more important or is the skin more important? And then explain why. And again, I don't really care which one you pick. You just need to pick one and then defend it. And that's what that is for that one. And my screen is dinking around, and I will get here. And we'll probably, and next week we'll probably talk more about the different artists that are in the background for this one. But it definitely, there's like 6 or 7 of them. Once you look at them and see how they approach this idea. So the assignment for this next module is the structure and skin. And the reason I'm telling you now is, next week we're going to look at everybody's wire models or wire sculptures. But I like having this in the back of your head because I don't know if you guys have heard of something called slow motion multitasking. It is an activity that demonstrates higher order of thought. And what is cool to me is that all of you guys do it. As long as you are going to school, as long as you have a job and a family or roommates, as long as you do more than one thing in your life, you are demonstrating higher order thinking because of slow motion multitasking. Slow motion multitasking means you concentrate on one thing, go to another, then after a while, go to another. You're not switching back and forth really fast. It usually takes about 20 minutes to shift your thinking when you focus on something different. What you're doing is you have all that information from these different things that are going on in your life in the back of your head. And when you need to, they emerge to help you with whatever other issues you're dealing with. For me, I was taking a computer language program class at the same time I was taking a professional copywriting class. And what was fascinating to me is that the professional writing class really helped me to articulate my thoughts so I could do the programming better. And the programming helped me to really decide what was most important and put things in the right order. And that in turn informed my writing. So my writing was a lot more concise and clear. So that's the kind of thing that I want to be going on inside your head. So we're looking at this. We're not going to really touch this until next week. And then, but I want you to be thinking about it, just somewhere in the back of your head. What we are doing for this is making sculptures that show both the structure and the skin as of equal importance. And the restrictions on this is you're going to create a module that's about the size of your fist or a tennis ball, a baseball, something around that size. You're going to make 5 to 8 of them. And they're going to be made primarily out of some of the sticks you have, skewers, popsicle sticks, whatever in your kit. And they're going to be generally geometric shapes. Then you're going to be looking at those things. You've made 5 to 8 of them. You're going to be looking at them, and then you're going to be covering some of the surfaces with paper. And when you do that, and not all the surfaces, and you can tell not all the surfaces are covered with paper. And then you're going to put them together in a dynamic way to activate the volume of space around it. Right here, the module that's repeated is this kind of orange crate shape. Now, in this case, the person also made ones that have the notches out, and that's totally fine. But you can see there is a very definite consistency to this kind of shape. They look like they're all orange crates of some sort or another, and some of them have, about half of them have notches out. And then this person attached cardboard, sometimes directly to the surface, and on this one, and this one, and this one, it looks like they added pins so that the cardboard that was attached was just separated out, maybe half an inch away from it. So here, cardboard is attached right to the side of this module, and then attached to pins, making it stick out about a half an inch on this side. And then the artist put them together in a way it wasn't just a tower. It was definitely not a horizontal line, but it was something where we have one right in front of us, we have 2 that go away to the right, then we have almost a spiral going away to the left and going up. And on this one, you can see the module is basically 2 pyramids stuck together with 2 faces covered with paper. And the person made 8 of them. 4 of them, they spiraled this way, each one going a little bit farther up. And then 4 of them, they spiraled the other way, each of them going up. I really like about this is you can look right through, you see the structure right there. The skin hides some things and shows off some things. It's behind some things, it's in front of some things, and they change it and make it really interesting. This one I like, but I don't like it as much because for me, the module is this kind of trapezoid shape and another trapezoid shape. It's not a stable shape. And some of them, they kind of alternate which trapezoidal areas or which triangle areas they'll attach the paper to. So feel that this is successful, but I think they missed the boat on making a module because it doesn't really feel like there's a module. Like I said, you kind of see like there's a cutoff triangle here and a cutoff triangle there. They're glued together there. Maybe this is the same kind of thing. Maybe this is the same kind of thing. I'm not as happy with this one as I am each of these two. So are you guys seeing the kinds of things that I'm pointing out in these three images? Okay, Kim, you say yes? Great. How about you, Jessica? Is it making sense? All right, great. Jessica says yes too. Excellent. So that's what you're going to be doing, and you're going to be constructing it. One thing that I have noticed with every class that I teach, there are people that think that they will win if they run through it as fast as possible. That is rarely the case with these things. You're creating new neural pathways, and I think that if any of these projects you spend less than 10 hours on, you're cheating yourself out of the experience. So if you do everything you need to and you look up and you've only worked on it for 2 hours, I'd say do more and more, because these are designed to be taking about 8 to 10 hours of the actual construction time and then planning, and do your best to use that time. You know, if you, like I said, if you do it quickly, stop, take a breath, and then go back over and work on it some more until you get closer to that time. Because time is an important element of constructing these things. And I from what I've seen with most of the wire sculptures that people have been turning in, time has not been an issue. You guys have worked on it and just stayed with it until it's done. And some people take 10 hours, some people have taken 14 hours and they're still working on it. And I hope it doesn't seem like it sounds harsh to you, but as you are working on new ways of looking at the world, your brain physically shifts. The more time you spend going over thoughts, revisiting thoughts, the more your brain shifts both physically and chemically to create new pathways. And that's what we want to accomplish in this class. So yes, spend at least 8 hours on the construction of this guy. And then documentation, we need 2 photos. And this, you are also going to be submitting it to the class discussion, which I hope nobody forgets. And I think on this discussion, you're just posting your work. Now, we will talk more about, I thought I was going to talk about it this week. I don't think I will. I'll talk about it next week. We are going to talk more about the applying the tools of artistic critique to do an artistic critique on one of your own pieces, and then also on one of the pieces of somebody else in the class. I really don't want you to worry about that until we get done with this module, because then you'll have 3 separate things that you can look at and draw from to pick something to critique. So again, it's important to do this. You do get 5 points, but you only have to post your own work in the discussion. So I am really sorry that my speakers are not working appropriately. I think it's just because of my internet connection. Do either of you guys, Kim or Jessica, do either of you have questions about any of the material that we've talked about today? Okay, no questions? Excellent. Be thinking about this stuff. Work on the quiz. If you miss anything, just refer to your textbook. Most of the time, most of the answers are going to be in the textbook. And if anybody does have other questions, email me or bring it up next week when we talk. But next week, again, we're going to be looking at everybody's wire sculptures, going through, looking at all of them. And then we're going to be talking more about the structure and skin. So if there's no questions or anything, that's all I needed to cover. We are going to end a little bit early tonight. I hope that is okay with everybody. But thank you so much for showing up and being with me. Again, I'm going to leave a link to Adam's sculpture video, that short video in the attendance thing. That link is also in the quiz. But definitely take a minute out of your busy day, watch that. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. So have a safe week, have a safe weekend, and we will see you next time.